Connecticut.
1700s?
1700s. We're closing on one this month.
Sure.
Yeah.
And another one next. And another one next.
And another one next month.
30
We're
days
rocking
on
them
state.
out. I know. That was amazing. Good job.
I don't know. I'm losing sleep over it.
This is Byron, Lazine, and Nicole, and you are tuned into episode 73 of The Real Word.
Word is up.
Did you get it this time, Suave? You got it? This time we've got Nicole's phone ringing.
Sorry,
We've
it's
got
like
a
my
lot of
kid's
distractions.
school or something.
We've got to move quick on the three rackets.
Distracting me a little today. A little bit. You're a little like you're kind of tight today.
It's a little tight feeling.
Yeah.
But it's one of those thin jackets.
I know, but it's like I feel like you're stuffy, like you're stuffing, like you're still stuffy. You feel stuffy.
Now
You
I'm
feel
stuffy.
good about it. Feel good about
Trying
it.
to up my professional game here for
Just
our
for today,
Real
though.
Word viewers.
Just for today.
Which means I'm not going to do any swearing. All right.
Oh,
Let's jump right into racket number one.
I'm ready.
Did you have a good weekend?
Great
Good.
weekend.
Great. Let's
Yep.
get into it.
Hope you did too.
Racket number one, home ownership likely to rise due to an aging population in this country. This is an Inman article. They're referencing a study, and we'll link up the article as we always do.
Mhm.
But when you and I both went through the article, we found it was more geared towards renters, not necessarily age.
Well, the photo was very misleading.
Well, the photo at the top's
it
got
shows like Grandma Ann, like
Granny
she's
doing
like
her thing. It's a
she's-
beautiful ring she has.
You think?
Yeah.
I don't know. She's
Got a ruby in it.
she's dusting.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope at her age I'm not ever dusting. But yeah, I mean, it sounded like it was a little misleading. It was actually extremely misleading. But yeah, no, it is mostly about renters and renters aging and percentage of home ownership, and do people still believe in it?
Let's start with where home ownership is today. Today it sits at 64.2%, which economists at the New York Fed noted is very close to the longer run average in the 30 years between 1965 and 1995, or 1994 rather. The home ownership rate hovered around 64%, so basically where we are today, before, of course, going up in 95 to 2004 to more than 69%. But we know the influence there with all the mortgages, the housing crash, and subsequent. Do you think?
Subsequent.
I knew it was going to get me.
We should just skip
Reading
the word.
too much on the real word.
You should have just skipped the. You should.
So
just
the housing
skip
crash and the
attempt.
recession knocked down the rate to 62% before it bounced back to where it is today.
So it's up like 2%.
So
What's that, 10
basically what they're
years?
saying is we're at a healthy rate
More.
from where we've
Right.
been in the past,
Right.
right? Now, when I was really excited for this article because I was like, you know what? The headline made a lot of sense to me.
Okay.
We have a rising population, but we also have people living longer. They didn't really get into that.
No, they didn't get into that actually at all. It
No.
was all about renters. It was all about, do renters still want to buy?
Right. And,
So-
and renters believing whether they can or cannot buy.
So
But
it's a double-sided actually article because it's talking about obviously like millennials and youngers getting older, and then obviously like, the baby boomers getting older too. So it's sort of like a burning on both ends.
when I look at the baby boomers, that's a huge population, right? And as they do get older and live longer, my gut, there's no data in this report, but my gut tells me a large percentage of them are going to tell their kids, screw you, I'm living in my house, I'm staying a homeowner, right? Like, when you get a large
Screw
population of people,
Screw you.
there's
Screw you
going to be
up.
some stubborn, like, maybe their kids
But are
like,
the
hey, maybe you should rent, let me get that
Rent.
money now. Maybe you should go
Well,
into
if
an
they're
old
smart,
folks
they'll
home.
actually let their children have ownership of their homes, or they will lose their homes.
Right.
But that's
I mean,
a whole nother topic. For
Talk
a
to your
whole nother
accountant
day.
on that.
Yeah.
I just believe there's going to be a lot of them that want to remain homeowners.
Sure.
And then you've got millennials that are moving out of being renters. And that's
Right.
really what this article gets into. If you're interested in reading it, again, it'll be linked up. And moving into homeowners. So to me, that could create the perfect storm, as well as the transaction getting easier over the next decade. I believe that's going to happen.
Do you think, though, so it's interesting because I read an article recently about the rise in people wanting to actually age in place has grown. And you actually see a lot of contractors now offering the service of turning people's homes into more of a handicap friendly home. So it's interesting to actually read this, but then also read articles that sort of contradict that a lot of people are going to want to stay in their current, 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath colonials, but just like sort of,
and I
manipulate it to work best for them.
I'm going to call this a racket because I question how much the homeownership realistic rate will realistically go up. Remember, we're at all-time lows basically for our interest rate.
Right.
And that's not driving it up. And if you go on like a website, this is a Harvard website, if you go jchs.harvard.edu and look up the multifamily stats, there are so many reports, and this is talking about large commercial multifamily real estate in our country. There are so many reports that tend to believe that the aging population is going to start renting as they age out. So
it can go so many different ways. I think inventory has a lot to do with it, though, too, why people aren't buying. And it's
not buying the right thing, but the right product might be available and a rent.
Right. Well, in all honesty, most people, I feel like I'm pushing a lot of people in the rent way just because it allows them the ability to wait until the right house does come on, or they're just putting themselves in a much better buying position because they don't have to like sell in order to buy. I mean, there's so many advantages to renting. I do, though, across the board still see people, regardless of whether it's here or if they're going to be, going south, like sort of where we're headed next, like most people do want to own. And that's just my own personal opinion, but it's just super interesting, like all the different contradicting
6.5
stories.
out of 10 people today do own. Does it get back up to 7 out of 10? I don't know. It could. I'm going to call it a racket just because there's not a lot of data in this particular report that shows me why it would indeed rise. But
and I think it's a racket because the photo has nothing to do with the article.
And maybe some of these old peeps will want, some of the beautiful antique homes that we have in Connecticut. Nobody wants to tear these antique homes, by the way. This is just a little inside racket in between the two rackets. Nobody wants to tear down these antique homes.
But nobody has the money to fix them.
Nobody's got the money to fix them, but we just want to leave them here in New England up because they're so damn historical instead of building the product that
God
maybe.
forbid they have white cabinets and granite countertops.
Yeah.
I mean, for real.
It's 2019, people. It's not the 1700s.
No, because if that was true, then we wouldn't even have toilets.
Yeah.
I mean.
Oh, they didn't have toilets?
1850.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we're literally, Nicole and I, here in these little shoreline New England towns in Connecticut, are literally selling homes pre-toilet. I didn't even know that. We should start putting that. Ness, MLS description. This home is pre-toilet.
Pre-toilet.
All right, racket number 2.
That's a racket.
Florida is the big winner as wealthy moves out of northern states. Connecticut in this article, this is a Bloomberg article, which we'll link up. Connecticut, our state, our lovely state here of Connecticut, was the biggest loser in this migration transition. Nicole, what are your thoughts?
So I guess I have a few questions, though, here, because I feel like, yes, there's a huge migration out of Connecticut. Obviously, I mean, we've been talking about this for years. There is obviously a huge, immigration into Florida. That I agree with. I guess where I'm like hiccuping a little bit is, and it doesn't talk about this at all here, is because I feel like a lot of people in Connecticut still actually are living in Connecticut, but they're making Florida their main residency.
Here's a great example. I just joined that country club. The golf club.
Are you sore at all?
No.
You feeling good about it?
Feeling good about it.
Yeah.
So anyways, when I filled out the application to try to become a member, interestingly enough, because there's enough people obviously and members of this club for them to put it, winter address and summer address, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
The majority of those club members have, whether it's their primary or not, have a place in another state.
Right. And I think though that, and I'm curious to see how that would actually skew these numbers, because it is much cheaper to like retire in Florida and have that be your primary residence than Connecticut.
So, but if people are coming up here for 4 or 5 months, which I agree they are, certainly,
with grandkids, there's so many people that are coming back.
And there are, we have a new development in one of our towns that we work in, Guilford, 66 High Street. Suave, you should put up a little 66highstreet.com here. People should go check out this new development. But there are people that are having, that have a home out of state, but are buying a condo in this development so that they have the 4 or 5 or 6 months even up here, because people want to be here. But if their income now is being taxed because they're a resident of another state.
Right.
Connecticut's not getting the tax draw out of that.
No, but the towns, the local towns.
Well, the town's going to get the if they
from
buy
property,
real estate, they'll get
yes.
some real estate taxes.
Yeah, so I mean, you are losing, but I'm curious to see what that number really is in like real life besides just people moving.
What I like about this article
yes.
is there's a lot of data.
There's tons of data.
As opposed to that last article, the data here is rich.
Mm-hmm.
Connecticut lost 1.6 of its annual adjusted gross income to the people who moved out of the Constitution state. That's what we are here, the Constitution state.
Did you know that?
So the people that moved out had an average income of $122,000, which was 26% higher than those migrating in. Okay, so the people moving into Connecticut had lower incomes. The people moving out were bringing these higher incomes to a place like Florida.
Right.
Florida, in fact, I believe the number was 17.9 or 17.1.
17.2.
17.2 billion. They gained 17.2 billion out of states like Connecticut, New York, New
Florida.
Jersey. 17.2 billion. We're right now in Connecticut. We've got a governor talking about trying to borrow 9 billion and we'll have our kids pay back 27 billion. Florida is just accepting off of migration 17 billion. 17.2 billion.
Yeah.
This is real data that is eye-opening to me. If I'm in New York, if I'm in Jersey, if I'm in the Northeast, if I'm in Connecticut like we are, I'm paying attention to this. I'm figuring out how to market to those people that are maybe becoming a resident of Florida but keeping something up here or not, right? Maybe they're selling it.
Well, maybe they're renting.
Or maybe they're renting, right? So the big winner, the total inflow was Florida, 17.2 billion. It goes all the way down to 2.4 billion for number 2, which happens to be Texas. Like there's a wide gap. Florida is really winning on the inbound migration.
Which is interesting because I feel like Florida also got hit the hardest during the recession. So, well, I don't really know what any of it means, but I mean, it's all very interesting to see. I mean, look at all those pinks. Look at all that pink and black.
In the article, they referenced the 122,000 down here.
Even Nevada. Look, Nevada. A lot of people are hitting the road from Nevada.
And people can move out of Connecticut. They go to other places besides. That's from. So this is just
leaving Florida to go to Nevada.
This is just in and out of Florida. So people, if you just look at Connecticut to Florida, the numbers jump up from that 122,000 average, which was outbound to any state. Because you have people that migrate from Connecticut to New York, Connecticut to Mass, all that kind of stuff, right? But if you just look at Connecticut to Florida specifically, we lost an average of 253,000. Families moving to Florida took an average of 253,000 in their family salaries. 4.5 the current inbound from Florida. So the inbound from Florida was just over $50,000. That's bad business. That's a bad trade-off for us.
You know what would be fun? We should fly down to Florida and we should talk to some of the I'm curious to see what the state is planning. Like, what are they? What's the scoop?
Well, they've been planning this for years. I mean, I know the southwest corner better than any other part of Florida, just because I spend time there.
Yeah.
But the 6 to 8 lane main roads and the 6 lane highways, they've been preparing infrastructure wise. No potholes, by the way, for this for a long, long time. They're ready for the influx. Like Naples in particular, in season you're up around, I think 700,000. It's residents. It's in the 400,000. That's going to 1 million people someday, and they're ready for it.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. You go to Miami, the numbers are just crazy, right?
Oh, yeah.
But all right. Anyways, if you're in Northeast, drop us a comment if you're seeing the same thing. If you've got clients that are moving out, the article will be linked up. Racket. What do you think? Is this a racket or is this just the way it is?
No, it's just the way that it is. Yeah. I feel like it's always just kind of been, But it's interesting, though, because I remember, so my great-grandparents lived in Florida, and we visited there a lot. And it's funny, though, because I feel like as a kid, I remember everyone being like, oh, like, you're from Connecticut. Like, it was like this, beautiful, not beautiful, but
people used
it was money.
Wealthiest,
yes. Yeah. And now
and you're like, hey, I haven't seen that.
I mean, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, back then I was like, I just it's just where I've always been. But I feel like it's completely different now. It's like, you're from Connecticut.
The story's changed. Oh, yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, racket number 3, an epic fall from grace. Realogy's total stock collapse. Over the past 5 years, their stock has cratered by over 90%.
You love talking about this. You talk about this every chance you get.
I think it's something to be concerned about.
Well,
if
there
you're
was
Coldwell Banker, if you're Sotheby's International, if you're C21, if you're Corcoran, right? Any of the Realogy brands, I mean, that's a huge drop.
Huge.
They have a ton of brick and mortar. They've got to think about how they're going to go over go through the next 5 years differently than the last 5 years where their stock plummeted, right? I saw somebody at an event, because their stock was just recently 25, now it's $8. We were at a Zillow event. We saw somebody who's Coldwell Banker. I said, I hope you didn't have a lot of that stock. And he was like emotional about it in the sense that immediately snapped back. I want to buy more. Do you?
I think you actually did ask him that too.
I said, do you really?
I was like, I'm going to go over to the bar and get a drink. You guys,
you're going to double down on that bet, or are you going to do the smart bet and buy Zillow, right? Because unless you know something that I don't, that all this brick and mortar throughout the country is in a place to evolve, right? We believe in brick and mortar, by the way.
Right.
We have 2 offices for a team.
Yeah.
I'm not out here EXPing you saying you shouldn't have brick and mortar. You need to think about your brick and mortar differently today. Do you have podcast studios in each one of your offices like we have, right? Are you able to leverage how you're going to leverage your space to how you're going to build individual brands from 2020 to 2025?
Well, I think the biggest part, you just nailed it right there on the head. I worked for Coldwell Banker, and it was and a lot of it, when you're in those situations.
Not to your Coldwell Banker. I love my Coldwell Banker peeps. I wasn't ishing. I was ishing my alarm there.
No, No, I hear you. I didn't even hear that, but I thank you for clarifying. It was, and it was always about the Coldwell Banker brand, though. It was always about, like, we can't do that here because then they'd have to do that in Colorado. It was never about actually building out each individual, like, agent's brand and sort of helping them. So I think you hit it there. I mean, I think that's going to be a really important push for these bigger box brands.
I mean, is this a racket? It would be a racket if I told you Realogy is done. That would be a complete racket statement.
That's not true.
What's not a racket is they need to start really thinking about exactly what we just said. How are you going to make this work over the next 5 years? And how are you going to really lean into building those individual brands? I think every company, whether you're a new disruptor or you're an old school vet like Realogy, needs to be thinking about that. How are you going to make stars within your company?
I think they sat at the top a little too long too, so they just got really comfortable. They got super duper comfortable.
This happens all the time.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, guys, keep it real, and please put in the comments anything you'd like us to talk about. Certainly, if any of these 3 topics relate to your situation, we want to hear about it.
Absolutely.
And let us know if you're in one of these Northeast states and if you've seen the migration to a place like Florida. Or maybe
what they're doing to optimize. Like, you have your license in Florida. Like, are people, No,
I got to turn that on. That's happening. The license.
Turn what on?
The license in Florida.
It's not on?
I've got the stuff done. I've got to,
It's not on?
I got to turn the faucet.
Dude. You always
coming soon. I'll announce that here on The Real Word. Trust me. All right, guys. Have a great day. Keep it real. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.